My 19-year-old daughter spent 7 months crafting a modern sculpture as a birthday gift for my mom, an emotional piece expressing her love and admiration. The very next day, we discovered it thrown out in the garbage. I didn't yell. Instead, I chose a different approach. 9 days later, my mother was the one screaming in distress. I didn't begin that morning expecting it would end with me standing inside a trash bin, but life loves its surprises. Sometimes it's a bouquet of unexpected flowers. Other times it's your daughter's art drowned in a puddle of black banana peels and something disturbingly meat-colored. Care to guess which one I got? The day started off normally. Too normally. You know that eerie sense of calm that often shows up before things fall apart? That was me, rolling into my mother's driveway, still clinging to the illusion of reason and mutual understanding. I'd come to help her clean up after her 65th birthday party. The celebration had taken place the night before, sophisticated, showy, filled with art world chatter and barely any cake. I hadn't stayed long. For me, Ivy, my daughter, was the true centerpiece. She had arrived carrying her sculpture, wrapped like a sacred artifact. 7 months of shaping, sanding, and soul poured into that piece. Her nerves had been electric, her hands visibly shaking as she handed it over. She'd also written my mom a letter, a genuine handwritten note using words like admiration, gratitude, and thank you for inspiring me. It should have been a defining moment. It should have mattered. But when I entered my mom's living room the next morning, the only thing on display was a crayon drawing by my 10-year-old nephew Noah. A crooked little house, a sun the size of Jupiter, and a stick figure I could only assume was Grandma. It was framed, literally framed, under glass, and hung at perfect eye level. "Isn't it adorable?" my mom asked as she noticed me staring. "It's bold," I said. She lit up. "He has such a raw sense of form. More like raw chicken, if we're being honest. But sure, let's all pretend the kid who once ate a glue stick is an emerging artistic genius." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. So as casually as I could, I asked, "Where did you put Ivy's sculpture?" She didn't even pause. "Oh, I'm still figuring out the perfect spot," she said. "For now, I've tucked it somewhere safe. You know how much mess we had last night." I nodded, forced a smile, kept quiet. Because if I said what I really wanted to say, it would have involved phrases like, "Are you serious?" and "Where the hell is it?" And I was doing my best, not to blow everything up. I told myself it was fine, that Ivy's sculpture was probably wrapped in bubble wrap somewhere, waiting for its proper unveiling. Then I went to take out the trash. Just one of those routine things you do at your mom's place. Grab a bag, head outside, lift the bin lid. I wish I could unsee what I saw. There, half buried under rotting lettuce and something pink that might have been shrimp, was a jagged edge of gray clay. That curve, I recognized it instantly. I'd watched Ivy sculpt it again and again, her fingers shaping it until it seemed to take breath. My stomach dropped. No, it couldn't be. I dropped the trash bag, stepped closer, opened the lid fully, and there it was. Ivy's sculpture, crammed between an empty champagne bottle and a paper plate soaked in grease, torn and crumpled. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I knew was I had to get it out. I reached in, but the sculpture was heavy, awkward, buried under layers of trash. I tugged, but it wouldn't budge, so I did the only thing I could think to do. I climbed into the bin. Let me be clear. I'm a grown woman, have a career. I pay taxes, I use hyaluronic acid, and I was up to my knees in garbage juice, trying to rescue my daughter's soul. The stench was immediate and violent, like fermented betrayal with a top note of expired salmon. I didn't care. I dug down. Gritting my teeth, balancing awkwardly as I reached the base of the sculpture, it was smeared in food and something sticky. I didn't want to investigate, but I had it. I had it in my arms. That's when I heard it. Laughter. I turned my head, and there he was. Noah was standing 10 feet away with his phone up, filming aunties in the trash. He yelled, "Look, she's in the actual trash." I tried to tell him to stop. "Noah, don't just put the phone down." Too late, he was already shouting into the house, "Mom, Grandma, come see this." I was about to beg him when I heard a car door slam Ivy. Ivy had just pulled up. I panicked, clutched the sculpture to my chest, and tried to crouch down as if somehow hiding in the bin would make me invisible. Ivy rounded the corner, frowning at the noise. She stopped when she saw me. Then her eyes dropped to what I was holding. Is that? I stood frozen, covered in trash clay in my arms. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. It's not what it looks like, I said, uselessly, pathetically. Ivy stepped closer. Her face was pale. Did Grandma throw it away? Her voice was so small, like she already knew the answer, but needed to hear it from someone who wouldn't lie to her. And I couldn't speak because anything I said would break her. More, she blinked hard, then turned, walked back to her car, got in, drove away, and I stood there in the bin alone, clutching what was left of her heart. I didn't go looking for old wounds that night. I just wanted to scrub the garbage stench off my skin, wash the clay from my hands, and maybe pretend none of it happened until morning. But Ivy was already home when I got there. She was curled up by the door, face blank. She didn't ask me if I'd saved the sculpture. She didn't ask me anything. She just walked past me straight to her studio and shut the door. I stood there holding what was left of her heart in my arms. 7 months of sculpting, sanding and shaping. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to do. So I did what I always do when I feel helpless. I cleaned. I scrubbed off every smear of food, every trace of wet cardboard. I dried it carefully. I placed it back on her workbench, and then I sat down in the hallway outside her door and stared at nothing for a very long time. And while I sat there, I thought about how we got here, how we always get here. I'm the older sister, 5 years older, to be exact, and for most of my childhood, I felt like an accidental pause in my parents' story. Something that happened in between modeling gigs and financial promotions. Our dad worked in finance, senior level stuff. We had money, not extravagant money, but enough that our fridge never buzzed. Our house always looked magazine ready, and my mother could find herself without ever worrying about the electricity. Bill, he was barely home, long hours. Lots of travel. The kind of man who bought you an expensive doll from an airport gift shop and called it bonding. But he never minded being the breadwinner. That was his thing, provider, traditional values, and all that. My mom, Judith, on the other hand, she was always on some new personal reinvention tour. First, she was a model, not the runway type, more the catalog and local commercial variety. She was beautiful, still is even at 65, the kind of beauty that makes people stop mid-sentence. And for a while that was enough for her until it wasn't when she got too full-figured for the industry her. Words not mine. She pivoted, became an art critic, started a blog, reviewed. Galleries joined something called the Art Appreciators Club, a name that has aged like lukewarm milk. Our house turned into a revolving door of art, friends, people with scarves in July, and opinions on negative space. Dad didn't get it, but he nodded, smiled, kept the lights on. I often wondered if my mom loved him, or if she just appreciated the financial freedom he gave her to become whoever she needed to be that decade. And then came my sister Daniela, 5 years younger, the golden child, the miracle baby, the one with dimples and volume and glitter in her footsteps. I told myself it was because she was the baby that things would even out, that being responsible and helpful and quiet would pay off. Eventually, spoiler, it didn't. Daniela could throw a tantrum in the middle of the Guggenheim, and Mom would call it an early sign of expressive energy. I once got grounded for wiping my hands on a towel instead of letting them air dry. Because you don't know what fabric does to the oils and paint, but I took it. I was the older one. I endured. It's what I do. When my dad retired, things changed. Not in the way you might hope. The money slowed down, but the lifestyle didn't. Mom had no plans to adjust. Instead, I found myself gradually picking up the slack. It started small, helping with the holiday costs, covering a bill here or there. Then it became bigger medical stuff, flights their annual New Mexico artist retreat. No one asked outright, they never had to, and I never said no. Then Ivy was born, my daughter, my heart, my center. And from the moment she could hold a pencil, she drew shapes, shadows, people, creatures. She lived in lines and texture. I never pushed her toward art. It was already in her bones. Mom, of course, took notice first. I was grateful she took Ivy to museums, introduced her to her art friends, gave her books on sculpture and modernism for a while. I believed, really believed, that this was going to be different, that Ivy was going to get what I never had. Except it wasn't different, it was worse, because Ivy didn't see the favoritism. She didn't feel the ice in her grandmother's compliments. She called it honesty. She's not mean. Ivy would say she just doesn't sugarcoat things. That's what I admire about her. She holds me accountable to a higher standard. She truly believed that earning her grandmother's approval was something worth striving for, that if she put in enough effort, created something truly meaningful, she'd receive it. And for 7 months, she did just that. She sculpted, poured herself into every detail, skipped social plans, stayed up well past midnight, tossed aside early versions that didn't meet her standards, like a seasoned artist. She wanted to make something worthy, something that would make my mom stop, really look, and say more than just, not bad. She wrapped it with care, personally drove it over, and even included a handwritten letter. I remember watching her write it, fold it, and tuck it carefully into the wrapping. She never showed me what it said, but I remember the look on her face when she sealed the envelope, like she was placing a piece of her heart inside, like it truly meant something. At the party, she waited patiently for the right moment, then quietly offered up her gift. My mother unwrapped it, gazed at it for a moment, and finally said, "It's good." That was all. No smile, no follow-up, no comments like, "This part stands out," or "You've come so far." Just a flat, "It's good." Ivy smiled, she nodded, said thank you. But later that night, as we were getting into the car, she turned to me and asked, "Do you think she liked it?" I asked her what she meant. She replied, "She said it was good, but not very good." Do you think she meant it like a B+, or just a B? She wasn't joking. She was dissecting it. Tone, timing, the precise tilt of my mother's mouth. Like her grandmother was some ancient art world riddle, and Ivy just had to crack the code to earn her love. She didn't say very, so maybe she thinks it needs work, or maybe that's her way of saying she liked it. What do you think? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that Judith wasn't some discerning critic. She was a narcissist in a pearl necklace. No matter how flawless Ivy made it, it would never be enough. "It's good" was likely the highest praise she'd ever receive. But I couldn't say that. Not yet. So I told her the only thing I could, that I was proud of her, that what she created was beautiful. She nodded and went quiet for a while, then said softly, if she didn't like it, she wouldn't pretend. She'd just tell me. I nodded too, but inside something cracked. Because what she took as honesty wasn't kindness. It was indifference, polished until it sounded neutral. I don't know how long I sat outside Ivy's door, long enough for the hallway light to start flickering, long enough for my back to ache in that particular way that reminds you your 20s are long gone. Her sculpture was back in the studio now, cleaned as best as I could manage. The letter lay flat between two sketchbooks. I didn't say anything as I placed them there. What could I possibly say? Sorry Grandma treated your love like trash? Eventually, I got up, made a cup of tea I never drank, and stared out the kitchen window, like I was waiting for a storm I could negotiate with. She came out after midnight, didn't speak, didn't even glance in my direction. She walked straight into the studio, stood before the sculpture, and stared at it like it had betrayed her, which in some strange way it had. Then she looked down and saw the letter. She didn't pick it up. She just whispered, she threw that away too. I nodded. She didn't break down, didn't raise her voice. She simply turned and asked, in the quietest voice, why would she do that to me? I wanted to say, because she never sees you the way you see her, or because some people don't know how to love anything that doesn't reflect them back like a mirror, or just because she's Mom, but instead I said, I don't know, because in that moment anything else would have sounded like an excuse. Ivy nodded once and left the room. Her bedroom door clicked shut, and I swear it echoed like a slammed gate. I stared at the sculpture, the lines Ivy had poured herself into the contours. She'd agonized over 7 months of work buried under someone else's ego, and now a new thought bloomed cold and slow. If she doesn't do something with this pain, it's going to eat her alive. So I went to the 24-hour art supply store. Yes, they exist, usually haunted by teenagers and men who claim. Spray paint is a philosophy. I walked in with a basket and a mission, brushes, canvases, acrylics, charcoal sculpting tools. Clay enough supplies to rebuild the Sistine. Chapel in a thunderstorm. The clerk raised an eyebrow. Starting a school, no. I said a war by the time I got home. Ivy hadn't come out. I didn't knock, just set everything up in her studio. No speeches, no pressure, just the tools lined up like an invitation. I left the door cracked around noon. It creaked open. Ivy appeared, still in yesterday's clothes, dark circles under her eyes, expression unreadable. She stood in the doorway for a long time, then silently walked in. Shut the door behind her. 10 minutes later, I heard the first brush hit canvas, then clay being dropped onto the table, then the sharp sound of something cracking followed by a long silence, then more work, then more silence. I didn't interrupt, didn't check in. I just sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea. I didn't touch again by the next morning. She still hadn't slept. I opened the door gently. She was crouched beside the sculpture, hands covered in paint, hair tied up with what looked like a shoelace. She didn't look at me, but I looked at the sculpture and what it had become. It wasn't the same piece. She'd broken it open, reshaped it, smashed part of it in with her fists, then filled the gaps with plaster and color and pieces of torn-up sketch paper. There was violence in it now, honesty. She'd embedded the letter too shredded and rearranged across the surface. You could still read fragments. I love you. Thank you for always seeing me. I wanted this to mean something, and then I saw the screen, a small digital frame, quietly looping a silent video. I leaned closer. It was me in the trash, knees, deep in garbage, dragging out the sculpture face, strained shirt, stained. Holding her heart in both hands, my chest tightened. Where did you get this? I already saw it, she said, not looking up. Noah posted it. I blinked in the cousins' group chat. Said it was hilarious. Aunt Helen, dumpster, diving for garbage art. I felt my jaw clench, and the rest of them, they laughed. She wiped her face with her sleeve, one of all, then put a raccoon emoji under it. I didn't say anything for a while, then I asked, so you used it? He shrugged. If everyone's going to laugh at me, I might as well make it part of the work. I stepped back, looked at her, at the piece, at the fragments of a girl trying to turn rejection into something that made sense, and I thought, no, we are not letting this die in a family group chat. That afternoon, I rented a gallery, a small gritty place downtown that used to be a mechanic's garage and still smelled faintly of oil. Perfect. I brought in the piece myself. Set it up in the corner under neutral lighting. Hung nothing on the walls. Just the sculpture, the letter fragments, the looping video of me in the bin. A story in 3 dimensions. When Ivy walked in and saw it, her mouth dropped open. You can't show that I can. You weren't supposed to. She threw it away, I said calmly. We're not hiding it. Her eyes darted to the sculpture, to the screen. It's personal, exactly. She was quiet, and then, she said not angrily, just tired. What if people don't get it? They don't have to. I said, they just have to see it that evening. I made some calls, critics I hadn't spoken to in years, friends of friends, a guy who once reviewed a sidewalk chalk exhibit like it was the Louvre. I told them the story, told them about Ivy, told them about Mom. Most didn't respond, one did. He came by the next morning, walked around the sculpture twice, didn't say anything. Then looked Ivy dead in the eye and said, "This belongs in our next show." She blinked seriously. He nodded. People need to feel something again. This feels like something. When he left, Ivy turned to me, stunned. What did you do? I shrugged. I took out the trash. The show happened 4 days later. It wasn't fancy. Just a shared group exhibit in a downtown space with cracked concrete and a coffee machine older than I am. But that room was packed, real people, not just art students with tote bags and cryptic tattoos, actual collectors, critics, and a woman who said visceral so many times I started counting, and they didn't just glance at Ivy's sculpture, they stopped, stood still in front of it, watched the screen on loop, read the shredded letter. Pieces layered into the clay, a few cried. One woman whispered. I felt that in my stomach and scribbled something into a notebook, like she'd just seen God by the end of the night. There were 3 emails asking about commissions. One man handed Ivy a card and said he ran a residency for emerging artists, and one collector, a serious one, made an offer $14 zeros in cash. No strings. Ivy stared at the number like it was in another language, then turned to me and said, "What do I do?" I said, "You wait." She blinked. Why? Because this isn't the end of the story yet. We didn't sell the piece, not yet, but word spread faster than either of us expected. Photos from the exhibit made it onto blogs. Someone tweeted a clip of the sculpture's video loop with the caption, "This hurt more than I thought it would." Then a thread broke it all down. How Ivy's grandmother threw away her sculpture, how her mom climbed into the bin to save it, how the piece now lived in a gallery while the family imploded quietly behind it. We didn't post anything. We didn't have to. The internet did what it always does. It connected the dots, filled in the gaps, and then lit the match. It started with a headline critic or coward, how a grandmother's trash became a 14. Zosen masterpiece, then the subheading. She called it good. The art world called it transcendent. No names, no direct quotes. But they didn't need names. Anyone who'd spent more than 5 minutes in our family tree or followed Mom's blog or her opinion column in that overpriced quarterly gallery magazine knew exactly who they were talking about, my mother. The art world, self-appointed oracle, the woman who once told me my wedding centerpiece looked visually anxious now, thanks to her inability to show the bare minimum of human warmth. She was a meme. One article called her the grandmother who couldn't recognize greatness if it stood sobbing in her driveway. Another dubbed Ivy, the artist of refuse. For once I didn't correct the spelling when someone texted to say they were sorry for the situation. The apology call started first from relatives, then art friends, then strangers who remembered Mom from some gallery event a decade ago. People asking if it was really true, if it was staged, if it was an artistic experiment. That's when I knew the storm was coming. 2 days later. It arrived Mom and Dad at my front door like a judgment day in beige slacks and silk scarf. I didn't answer right away. I let them ring the bell 3 times. Then I opened it just enough to remind them it was still my house. Mom barged in. Anyway, Dad followed. Of course he did. She was livid, that tight-lipped color in her cheeks. Kind of livid. That meant I was about to be accused of a betrayal. Larger than murder, but slightly smaller than reupholstering her dining chairs without permission. "You have to fix this," she snapped. I leaned on the doorframe. "Good morning to you, too." She threw a copy of the Journal of Visual Culture on my table. Ivy's sculpture was on the cover in bold, wounded object. "Is truth. They're calling me heartless," she said. "They're calling me irrelevant." "Well," I said, "one of those is a matter of opinion." She did not laugh. Dad cleared his throat like he was about to. "Try diplomacy." He opened his mouth, but Mom cut him off with a raised hand. "You're going to go public and say it was a misunderstanding." She ordered that the trash can was symbolic, that I never threw it away, that Ivy and I planned it together. I blinked. "Wait, are you asking me to lie? Or are you lying to yourself now, too?" She flinched, recovered. "It was a critique exercise," she continued, eyes flashing, an artistic challenge. I was guiding her. I always believed in her potential. I let that sit for a second, just hang there in the air like spoiled perfume. Then I said, "Mom, you didn't throw away her art to inspire her. You threw it away because you didn't think it mattered." She went quiet, that brief, dangerous kind of quiet. "Then I am being excluded. Good." "We can't pay the mortgage," Dad said quietly. "There was—" I looked at him. "That's not my problem anymore," he blinked. "You've been helping for years." "Yes," I said. "And then your wife threw my daughter's soul into a trash can, so I stopped, Mom." Stepped toward me, like she was about to deliver some grand monologue, but I beat her to it. "You want a press release? Here's one I cut you off financially, emotionally, legally if I have to. This was your choice. You're punishing us," she hissed. "No," I said. "I'm just done pretending you didn't do this to yourself." I shut the door before she could respond, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel guilty about it a week later. Ivy's sculpture was invited to a group show in New York, then another one in Berlin. Then someone asked if she could do a limited print series of the embedded fragments and screen loop. She wasn't even done with her second year of college, that $14,000 offer. We turned it down. Eventually, it sold for $32,000 to a collector who called it the most emotionally honest piece of art I've ever seen from someone under 25. Ivy didn't believe it, still doesn't really, but she started sleeping again and eating and sketching. Things just because she wanted to. And then just when I thought the dust might settle, we got the legal notice from my sister Daniela. Of course, her email read like a petty PowerPoint presentation. Her son, Noah, she claimed, had filmed the video that Ivy used in the sculpture that made it his intellectual property. She was seeking 30% of proceeds retroactively. My favorite line as his legal guardian: I'm obligated to protect his creative rights. I was halfway through laughing when I got the second one from Mom, claiming joint ownership of the sculpture on the basis that it was a reflection of their shared relationship and that no piece of art exists in a vacuum. She argued that she was a necessary catalyst and that without her, the art wouldn't exist. I wanted to take that moment and frame it, hang it in a gallery under the title, Narcissist in Natural Light. So, we lawyered up. Ivy cried the night we filed our legal response, not out of fear, but because suddenly the betrayal felt so deliberate, like they hadn't just trashed her creation, they were trying to profit from the ruins. The court process was brief. Noah had uploaded the video himself, shared it in a family group chat with 16 relatives. No watermark, no copyright disclaimer, no privacy settings, just a shaky recording of me inside the trash bin. The caption read, "My aunt is actually in the bin." Daniela's lawyer attempted to argue it was still his intellectual property. Our attorney replied, maybe so, but Ivy didn't steal it. She incorporated it into a broader, transformative artwork. It's commentary, it's emotional expression. It falls under fair use. The judge agreed. He said something like, "This is art, not piracy," then dismissed the case, tossed it out like it belonged in the same trash can I'd climbed out of. Daniela's entire argument collapsed before it even stood upright. And as for my mother, the judge asked her one simple question. Did you knowingly dispose of your granddaughter's sculpture and the accompanying letter? She tried spinning it again, called it performance art, claimed it was part of some unspoken life lesson. But the judge cut her off, declared that Ivy's work was clearly personal, transformative, and autobiographical. Any so-called inspiration was unintentional. It was emotional harm, not creative input. Final ruling, 100% of rights and profits awarded to Ivy. No appeals, no extensions. The story hit the blogs the next day. ArtNet, hyperallergic, even a few TikTok explainer videos. But one headline stood out. From rejection to recognition, the grandmother who tried to copyright disapproval. Daniela stopped answering messages. My mom went quiet. Her blog hasn't seen a single update since. But Ivy, she's back in the studio, working on something brand new. No fragments this time, no screens, no recycled footage, just her hands sunk deep into the clay. Last time I peeked in, she looked up and smiled at me, a real smile. Not one of gratitude, not one searching for approval, just present. And for us, that might be the most radical piece of art yet. It's been 3 years. Ivy graduated with honors. She's now a full-time artist with her own studio, her own students, and a packed calendar of commissions. She teaches part-time at the very college that once used to paralyze her with fear. Apparently, fear is no match for someone who's endured something worse than a classroom critique. We don't hear from my parents or Daniela anymore, not directly. But word travels. They sold the big house, moved into something smaller in the suburbs. My mom's been spotted working part-time at a gallery gift shop, folding postcards next to prints of artists she used to critique. It's poetic, really. As for us, we're doing just fine, better than fine. But tell me, did I go too far or just far enough? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell.